you are the most powerful man in the world, and you are dead. The whole city has turned out to watch you go. Senators walk in front, then magistrates, musicians, mourners hide to weep, a procession stretching down the sacred way, and at the very end, behind your body, walks a man wearing your face. Not your son, not your heir. A stranger in a mask that looks exactly like you, and he's about to open his mouth and make the whole city laugh at you, at your habits, your little failings, everything people whispered about you while you were alive. And here is the part that would make you sit up on the BA if you could. Your family paid for him. The state paid for him. The biggest funeral in the world, arranged by the people who loved you, and the guest of honor was a clown whose job was to roast you in front of everyone you ever ruled. This is the story of the archimimus, the chief actor of the Roman mimes, and one of the strangest jobs in the ancient world. For the funerals of the great, the family hired him the way it hired the mourners and the flute players. He put on a wax mask of the dead man's face, and by the usual custom, he imitated the actions and the words of the deceased in his lifetime. His voice, his walk, his little gestures. And his vices, because the jokes always came from somewhere real. The crowd knew exactly who was being imitated, and that was the whole point. To understand why Rome paid for this, you have to understand what a great Roman funeral actually was. It was the biggest stage in the city, and the family used every inch of it. Actors wore the wax masks of every ancestor who had ever held public office, each dressed in the robes of the office he had won, so that the whole history of the family walked down the street in a single afternoon. A hired speaker delivered the eulogy. When the dictator Sulla died, his funeral included a golden litter and 2,000 golden crowns, carried along by soldiers, magistrates, and crowds of ordinary citizens, and nobody was surprised, because this was how Rome buried its great. The bigger the man, the bigger the show, and the more the family could make the crowd remember him. It was advertising and religion and theater all at once. And for an emperor, the show went one step further. The ceremony turned the dead man into a god. A caged eagle was hidden inside the funeral pyre, and at the right moment it was released to carry the emperor's soul up to heaven while the crowd watched. That was the official story of the day. The emperor was divine now. He had joined the gods. And at that very same funeral, the state had hired a man to tell the crowd that the new god was a cheapskate. Take the Emperor Vespasian, who was famous for being careful with money. The people of Alexandria even nicknamed him after one of their own kings who was notoriously stingy. When Vespasian died, the actor who wore his mask was a mime named Favor, and Favor did what the custom required. He imitated the dead emperor, and at one point he turned to the officials in charge of the funeral accounts and asked them, in a voice loud enough for the whole crowd to hear, how much all of this cost. 10 million sesterces, they told him. And Favor cried out, "Give me 100,000 and throw me in the Tiber." The crowd heard it. This was the emperor's own funeral, paid for at state expense, and the official entertainment was a joke about the emperor being so cheap that the whole funeral was a waste of money. And the wonderful thing is, Vespasian would probably have laughed. His last words, according to the historian Cassius Dio, were, "I am already becoming a god." The man joked about his own deification while he was dying, and then Rome deified him, and then a hired clown called him a skinflint in front of the entire city, at the very ceremony that made him divine. So why? Why would the most powerful state on earth pay a man to mock the most powerful man on earth at the exact moment it was declaring him a god? Think about what the funeral was really for. The eulogy said what the family wanted said. It was the official version, bought and paid for. But Rome knew that the dead man's life was going to get a verdict anyway, from the crowd. And the ritual gave that verdict a shape. Rome had a whole family of these licensed moments. At a triumph, when a general rode through the city at the peak of his glory, his own soldiers sang rude songs about him to his face, and it was tradition. At the Saturnalia, masters and slaves traded places for a day, and the slave got to order the master around. And at a funeral, the mime said what everyone thought. The pattern is the same every time. Power that can never be laughed at becomes unbearable, so Rome built small, safe places where the laughter was allowed to happen, controlled, scheduled, paid for. The funeral was the last of those places, and it was the one a dead man could not control. He could not buy the crowd's silence. He could not threaten the mime. The verdict was coming, and the only choice was whether it came as a joke or as something worse. You can see what happens when the balance breaks, because it happened once, at the most famous funeral in Roman history. When Julius Caesar was murdered, there was no mime that day, no licensed joke. Instead, the crowd was shown his wax image with the wounds of his murder on it, and the funeral turned into pure fuel. The result was mob violence that ran for months and ended with the murderers fleeing the city. A funeral that only praises is a bomb waiting to go off. The joke was never the insult. The joke was the valve. The custom lasted as long as the old world did. The last great funeral of the old style came in the year 211, when the Emperor Septimius Severus died far from Rome in Britain, and his body was cremated where he fell. So Rome did the next best thing. It held a funeral for his wax image. Physicians examined the image, pronounced it ill, and on the seventh day pronounced it dead, and it was laid on a vast pyre, and the eagle was released to carry his soul to heaven. After that, the great public funerals with their actors and their masks faded away with the empire that had invented them. And what died with them was this: the one place in Roman life where the most powerful man in the world could be told the truth in public to his face at the very moment he was being made a god. That is the sort of thing this channel loves, the moment a society reveals what it actually believes, not in what it says, but in what it builds. An empire that made its emperors gods and still hired someone to tell the truth about them. If you want more of that, the truth they left out of the eulogy, subscribe. The mask is already made and the procession is waiting.